Will, in 3 to 4 weeks' time, announce more detailed policy on how we will actually carry out those deportations. We'll do that after the election, but I make the intention very, very clear here today.
Developing today, a major new row between Reform UK and its critics, including axed MP Rupert Lowe, over whether it has broken a key pre-election promise to reveal a clear mass deportation plan in May. Well, just check your diaries, folks. We are in June, and there is no plan that has come to the fore. We'll debate this with Father Calvin Robinson and Alex Phillips in just one moment, but first look at very clearly the promises that were made before the local elections.
Will, in 3 to 4 weeks' time, announce more detailed policy on how we will actually carry out those deportations. We'll do that after the election, but I make the intention very, very clear here today.
We talk about we'll deport everybody who's here illegally inside Nigel's first term, which would then obviously act as the ultimate deterrent from further people coming.
All of we estimate over 1.2 million people here illegally. They need to be deported as well, and Nigel will do that in his first term.
We're going to cut net migration to zero. We'll stop the boats and we'll deport everybody.
What about people who are here already?
Okay.
What about people who are here already?
Rupert Lowe posted about this on the 24th of April. Farage stated at a big press conference in Dover that in 3 to 4 weeks' time, the detailed deportation policy would be released. On April the 26th, Yusuf posted the full policy document and detailed plan will be published next month. May gone, no sign of any detailed policy. Where is it? Where is the proper mass deportation policy? 1,200 crossed yesterday. This is urgent. Stop messing around with inane policies to expand the welfare state and produce a detailed plan on the illegals. In April, they relented following overwhelming deportation pressure exerted by the, quote, online right and thousands of Reform members. They scrambled to hold this conference to push back the tide. It worked partly, but when you say something, you have to deliver it. At least that's how I like to operate. They have not delivered again. They're just hoping this goes away. People will forget, and members will forget. If you're a supporter, email them. They made you a pledge. Ask why they haven't delivered. Hold them to account. The Reform leadership does not want mass deportations of illegal migrants. Farage labelled my deportation calls as a very grave, dark and dangerous use of language. I was censored at a Reform event for wanting to use the term mass deportation. Just look at the language they constantly deploy, deporting those who come illegally. Future tense. That is weak. That is not good enough. One sniff of the Westminster upholstery and Farage has gone soft. As we know, they all must go. Every single illegal migrant must be deported. That has to be the ultimate objective. Just like with Reform's promised rape gang inquiry in January, they will take the headlines but fail to deliver. I am yet to see an apology from Farage on that. To be involved in a political party that would so brazenly go back on such an important pledge makes my skin crawl. Again, for my small role in that, I am sorry. It is filthy politics. We've had broken promises from political parties for decades. That was incredibly tough from Rupert Lowe. And unfortunately, it doesn't at this point seem to be the only promise that Reform UK has not kept. World by Wolf posted on X in February, Nigel Farage said he'd bring a private prosecution against Jonathan Reynolds MP. Now, he was the business secretary who lied about being a solicitor. 4 months later, have lawyers been instructed? Have papers been served? How many flagrant lies must Farage tell before his supporters hold him to account? We don't need another liar in number 10. So this was the claim that Farage made about Jonathan Reynolds.
I can tell you tonight that there will be a private prosecution brought against Jonathan Reynolds.
Okay, so let's debate this now. Alex Phillips, she is proudly a supporter of Nigel Farage, and Father Calvin Robinson, well, he's not. So Alex Phillips, I guess the issue that I've got is these are very, very good things to say. But doesn't Rupert Lowe have a point that it's not enough to say them, you have to do them? So if you promise a private prosecution of Jonathan Reynolds, you've got to do it. You got the headlines in February, but where is it? If you say that by the end of May, you're going to have a clear policy release on mass deportations, you've got to deliver it. Don't you worry, Alex Phillips. And obviously, in your past, you were one of Nigel Farage's key lieutenants, especially on the communications game. But don't you worry that they're playing the short-term communication game and not actually delivering on the promises they're making. And that is a concern.
No, I'm not particularly worried, actually. I was with everybody from Reform last night at the pub, and I know full well that so much stuff is in train. They're an incredibly busy party trying to draw up policy. They had to fight the local elections, get all the candidates for that. They've now got to orchestrate the auditing at local council level. They've created a private sector team to do that pro bono, as they've also created a private sector legal team who will operate pro bono to push back against migrant hotels. And I have absolute confidence the policy units will be working on that. But if you're going to come up with a policy, you'd better make sure it's deliverable. You better make sure it's legally tight. You'd better make sure you've done the costings for it. So perhaps their time has slipped, and I look forward to seeing that policy in due course. We're 4 years away still from a general election, so there's 4 years within which parties have to draw up manifestos with fully meted out plans. Okay, so it hasn't come in May. We're only just into June. Let's wait and see. I know how busy that party is. I know how tirelessly everybody is working. And it's life. Sometimes you make a plan to do something. I've been planning for the last week to write an article that I've promised people that I haven't managed to get around to doing because life got rather busy and there were other things I had to attend to. So I'm fairly confident that we are going to get that policy. The fact that whether it comes at the end of May, which it hasn't, or in June, or even frankly in the next year, I don't particularly care about it, but they have to do it, but they have to do it properly. There's no point doing something half-cocked, which then doesn't stand up to scrutiny.
But first, the great thing about having you here on Outspoken is that you are awake to the massive problems with the mainstream media and the disturbing reality that it's impossible to trust the fact checkers who try and dictate the narrative. Now, given we love the news and want to stay informed but no longer believe so much of what the establishment gatekeepers tell us, it can leave us in quite a predicament, right? But I have the solution. It's called Ground News, and it's the best way to stay informed and cut through media bias and manipulative narratives so you can get the facts for yourself. I actually have it on my phone and in my bookmarks online because it's become so essential to my daily life. And you can see for yourself at ground.news/outspoken. But before I reveal an amazing discount for you today, let me show you this incredible website and app in action. So we're going to use the shocking story that I'm so passionate about, the incarceration of the UK's political prisoner, the grieving mother and housewife Lucy Connolly, who remains behind bars after one tweet and had her appeal rejected, sparking outrage across the world. So you can see clearly in one place that 37 sources are covering this story. Ground News instantly shows how the story is being covered by the media, broken down by whether it leans left or right, illustrated by its biased distribution chart. Then if you scroll down, you can see every headline about the story along with the political bias and ownership of the publication. Interestingly and promisingly, 32% of the sources in this case are independent. Now, the left-wing media covered the story predictably, with Wales Online flagging her racial hatred tweet and the Daily Mirror going full-on political propaganda with the headline, Tory councillor's wife jailed for sending set fires to hotel, loses appeal bid. But the coverage on the right-leaning outfits was actually far more accurate, with Guido Fawkes tapping into the horror of Starmer backing the 31-month sentence for one tweet, and the Daily Express saying her incarceration is a moral stain on British justice system. The Spectator said simply she is in prison because of her politics, while my friend Alison Pearson spoke to Lucy in prison for the Daily Telegraph. My favourite feature is the blind spot feed. That services upwards of 20 stories daily that receive the majority of coverage from one side of the political spectrum. So if you love the news like I do, the blind spot feed is the best way to get a balanced perspective on what's happening. Go to ground.news/outspoken or scan the QR code on screen if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble to subscribe today. And check this out. Today, you will get 40% off the same Vantage plan that I use for unlimited access. So that's ground.news/outspoken. But now, back to the show.
Well, Alex makes some fair points, but at the same time, life is busy and we're all working hard. But then you don't set a deadline if you can't meet it. If I set a work deadline and I don't meet it, I don't get paid. If a politician sets a deadline and they don't meet it, they shouldn't get our votes. They should only make promises that they are sure they can keep, because we are sick and tired of too many promises being broken. And they may not be lying. It may be that they meant these dates to be stuck to. But if they don't follow through, what good is it to any of us? This is the problem we face with politics in Britain at the moment. We don't know who to trust because we've been beaten and abused for so long. It's a really bad relationship that we have with our establishment. And when it looks like the party who's supposed to be against the establishment is joining the establishment, then we're kind of like, then who do we vote for? People are lost, confused. And this is why people are clinging on with a thread of hope that Farage will be the lost savior of British politics. I don't particularly think he will be, but if people are hanging on to that, I understand why they are, because they want to see change. They want to see a difference, and Reform keep promising change. They keep promising to make a difference, but they don't seem to have whatever it is that they need to make it through, to follow through. And so they need to fix that. They need to become more professional. First and foremost, they need to become a proper party that people can become members of, voting members, a democratic party, which is something that Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe have been talking about for months now. So first they need to become a party, but once they are a party, they need to follow through with everything that they say if they want to build trust. And I get it. They're playing the party game of not seeming too far right in terms of mass immigration, mass deportation. Don't use those words because they want to court the middleman, the centrist dads, which is fine if you want to expand your vote base, but don't leave your core behind. Make sure you have your core with you. Otherwise, you will have nobody.
Yeah, and I think because we're so many years out, don't say something if all you're trying to do is get a cheap headline. I'm not speaking about the mass deportation policy there, but I'm speaking about the private prosecution of Jonathan Reynolds. Clearly, that was a cheap headline. Don't make a promise you can't keep, because we do need to have faith. This does have to be a new type of politics. Then, of course, you get to the whole issue of the left versus right thing. And I do want to discuss this because, I'm sorry, I'm unashamed in the fact I do want a right-wing party. I think the UK deserves a right-wing party. I think this is the moment for a true right-wing small c party to take control of the United Kingdom. And this constant desire for Reform UK to say that it's not a party of the right, it's not a party of the left, while clearly moving to the centre-left on policy does concern me. Here's how their Deputy Leader, Richard Tice, defended it to The Spectator.
Labour breakfast and a bit of Labour tea maybe after the Tory lunch. And look, at the end of the day, if you want to win elections, then you've got to win votes from all over. Yeah. But I come back to this point. All of these labels about left and right, forget it. It's actually about common sense politics, common sense, business-like deals for on behalf of the taxpayer.
And then later in that interview, Richard Tice actually said, for people who are concerned about Reform UK and this policy shift, just trust us. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to trust any political party. I need to see deliverables. I need to see a clear plan. And personally, I don't want to just have a party of common sense. I do want to have a party of the right. You wouldn't say Margaret Thatcher would have said that she was just a party of common sense. No. She was proudly a Conservative party on the right. And this is something that the future Conservative leader, Robert Jenrick, is making a real play of. Watch.
Farage getting into bed on welfare. But I know Nigel Farage likes a pint or two, but it feels to me as if he had one too many before he announced that he was going to spend £3.5 billion extra on welfare. And then you've got Zia Youssef, the chairman of Reform, doing this wacky cryptocurrency policy in Las Vegas. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm all for innovation, but this is not the number one priority of my constituents in Newark. I don't think Reform have the answers to the challenges this country faces. That is what I'm focused on.
All right, but
And Liam Halligan, who was, of course, all of our colleague at GB News, brilliant economics guy, posted on this. Labour and Reform, the two parties currently most likely to win the next election, now look to be chivying each other into ever higher spending commitments. This at a time of genuine financial peril, with state debt service costs well over £100 billion per annum and 30-year gilt yields at a multi-decade high. What we need is an opposition party to counter the big spending message, appealing to millions of voters who know in their bones successive UK governments have spent beyond their means, and that at some point the music will stop with painful economic and financial consequences. This is the opportunity Kemi Badenoch's Tories have been waiting for. Have they the courage to take it? Well, I would say almost certainly not. But, Alex Phillips, do you understand where I'm coming from? Like, no, I don't want you to be to the left. I think we deserve a right-wing party. And at the moment, Reform UK seems to be saying quite unashamedly, no, we're not a right-wing party.
Well, as someone who's come from the origins of UKIP 1.0, UKIP 1.0 was not technically a right-wing party if you're going to do the drop-down menu, because UKIP, as has Reform UK, have built in some fairly left-wing economic policies, and that's always been the case. It's country first, it's about putting the nation first, whether that is regarding nationalising certain entities or a pro-natalist policy. I did notice when Nigel did his press conference on lifting the two-child benefits cap, it's been costed and they've figured out how they're going to do it. And there were other offers in there, which I personally applaud, like making sure office developments have creches. But I don't think it's a fully fleshed out proposal yet. And I wonder if that's going to make the cut come the actual manifesto in 4 years' time. But, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with encouraging people to have more babies. We know we've got a huge demographic problem. We've just spoken about it there, haven't we? When it comes to Matt Goodwin's look at what's going to change in the United Kingdom, we know that we need Brits to be having more babies, and so there needs to be ways to address that. And he also made it very clear that this is not going to be a policy, but the welfare is not going to be open to migrants who have come into the country. So, you know, at the end of the day, when it comes to the labels of left wing and right wing, I don't think they're always technically helpful. I'd rather political parties had a smorgasbord of ideas and policies that interlink and have a conjoined plan and don't necessarily adhere to the idea that, well, because we're right wing on this issue, we've got to be the same on all of these other issues. But I'm not personally for lifting the two-child benefits cap. I don't think at the moment it is a priority. There are other ways to encourage natalism in the country. Like I said, as a woman of childbearing age, what would be really blimmin' helpful would be if I could go to work, there'd be somewhere to leave the baby while I presented a show and pick it up again, something affordable, which is why I think companies, big businesses, big office developments, as well as having the coffee cart and the breakout space so Keith and McCounts can go shoot some hoops, and the gym in the basement and the roof terrace where you can, you know, have a drink once you finish work. Where do you put the kids? That is more important. Propagating and saving the human race is more important than Keith and McCounts sitting on a beanbag. And so I think we really need to look in that direction when it comes to pro-natalist policy, because what you want to do is encourage people who are working.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And the
not people who are not earning money.
Well, I couldn't agree with that. And the problem is, Father Calvin, for all of the talk that we do have mega issues in terms of our birth rate, right? And no one is denying that. And our friend who's been better on this than really anyone in the country, it's a passion of his, Colin Brazier, is against the Reform UK policy on this. I read a column that he wrote about that. And the problem is, Father Calvin, when we're talking about demographic change, when we're talking about these Matt Goodwin figures, the lifting of the child benefit cap is really going to help most that Muslim population where the birth rate is already so much higher. But Father Calvin...
Sure, but I don't think that's good enough excuse. Get rid of that Muslim population. If we're going to have welfare system, if we're going to have benefits, I think they should be going towards mothers. The question of what do we do with the children, where do we put the children? They should be at home with their mothers, learning from their mothers. Motherhood is the highest vocation we have. It's a great blessing. It's a great gift. And it's a shame to forget Keith and accounts. It's a shame to have Judy on screen. Be at home with your children, women, for goodness sake. We don't want to put them in creches. We don't want to ship them off to the state to indoctrinate. We want mothers raising their children properly. And to do that, sometimes they need support from the state.
Yeah, it's a fascinating debate. Father Calvin, what do you make overall of this idea that actually Reform UK is sort of leaning into not being a right-wing party? Does that give an opportunity for the Conservatives to come back, as Liam Halligan is suggesting?
It does if they have the kahunas to do so. I don't think the current Conservative Party does, but they could eventually get to a point where they say, look, we are a right-wing party, where they could go, we are a Thatcherite party, economically right-wing, socially right-wing. They haven't been socially right-wing for a long time. Occasionally they've been economically right-wing. I was in the Conservative Party when they brought in austerity measures. That was a hard sell on the doorstep, but it was about responsibility. And it was about saying we don't have a magic money tree and we can't spend more than we earn. And it was about bringing the country back into controllable means of spending and not living off debt. We went through years of that. It was finally starting to work. And then COVID comes along and, the Conservatives find the magic money tree that they've been telling Labour about for all these years and splashed and spended and furloughed the country into bazillions of debts that we'll never get out of again. And so it will take a hard sell to come back to being economically conservative, but at least it will be good to see some socially conservatives again. I don't think the Reform Party is there. I think they're too afraid of the term right-wing or even centre-right at this point. They really, really want to court the middle ground, the centrist dads. They want to be acceptable around the dinner party. They want to be the establishment, essentially. And the Conservatives are still there. They're already there. So it's a case of, can they be brave enough to push out of that and say, no, this is a small c conservative country. The way to fix it is small c conservative values, both socially and economically, and we're going to embrace them and push them hard. Do they have what it takes, either of them? I don't think they do at current, but we've got, like you guys have both been saying, we've got 4 years. That's a long time in politics. Anything can happen between now and the next election.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go wherever you are.